Hello, I'm back.
Okay, sir, welcome back.
Ipase moto.
Answer ya bro.
Are you able to see the
Sir.
screen? Are you able to see the screen?
Boys mulijangu bozimisa mic.
Screen mkuiona?
Ai,
Ai.
tukuona ni mlipo koma kwezelese.
Ya kumaso slide sikuoneka.
Slide sikuoneka.
Ndio mautandauzayo ka.
Are you able to see the screen? The
Yeah,
slide.
it's connected.
Zabwino bwino.
Okay. Yeah, so let's move on from this investment. Then government purchase. These are also what it's just explaining what we mean by government expenditures. So basically, expenditures on goods and services. They can also be expenditure on social activities as well. So it's not just expenditure on buying maize or buying drugs or whatever. If we have a drug industry, for example, if we were producing a lot of pharmaceuticals, we would be talking about our production of antibiotics or production of painkillers, some of which is bought by individuals, some of which is bought by government, and so on and so forth. Schools, the same thing. Roads, same thing. So some of the expenditures are consumption, some of the expenditures are on capital goods, that is investment. So it includes expenditures on final goods, as well as direct purchases, including, for example, even on employment. But it should not include government transfers. Government transfer payments should not be included in your calculations. Exports, net exports, as we said, that GDP only reports spending on goods and services produced in the country. But remember that some of the output is exported. So that one we should capture too. But at the same time, we should reduce what we have spent on imported products. So now, that is the formula which we explained, which I explained. What is how can I move this thing away from my screen?
Chiticho.
Ichi apa pamene pakuyenda kasa panga.
Mborijani sasa ndukumva.
I want to see how I can minimize this thing on my right hand of the screen. Or it's only
Okay,
me
zomwe
who is seeing
mupange.
it. Sorry?
Mupite apo pamwamba papa X pa. I presentation yanu ndiye mupange ka button ka just be next to X kumukadineso ipangika minimize ka region presentation. No, not that one.
Minimize
This
so
one.
says.
Ai, kenako. Button linalo. To your right. To your right.
This
No,
one.
to your right. Yeah, this one. That one. You click it.
Oh, iwe. Tachita
Oh,
minimize
yapangika ije.
zolakwika.
Okay.
Maybe this one. Ndapanga. Umango ziseka. Ndapanga.
Zabwera mochedwa.
So okay, so I should take this opportunity when we are dealing with X minus M, exports minus imports. Exports minus imports, this is in balance of payments or in national income accounting, this is what we call a current account. And this is what we call trade. Balance of trade is something to do with X minus M. What are your exports? What are your imports? So when you X minus M gives you a positive answer, we say you have a balance of trade surplus. When X minus M gives you a negative number, we say we have a trade deficit. And you also
Sir.
might have been hearing quite a lot about issues of being an exporting country or export rate growth, meaning the GDP is being driven by exports, meaning that the net exports is huge in your equation here. So this equation, which is GDP is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. X minus M is what we call net import, sorry, not net exports. So sometimes when we say export rate growth, it means your emphasis on your net exports is high. So your policies about growing your economy is emphasizing on having this net export. And this is where issues of foreign exchange also come in. Foreign exchange earnings are driven by this X minus M. So now in Malawi, the composition there is that usually our net exports are negative. So for example, you will see that for the past few years, our net exports have been minus $2 billion. So it's something like our imports are $3 billion, our exports are $1 billion. So exports are just $1 billion, our imports are $3 billion. So in that sense, you have a trade deficit. So you are a net importer, not net exporter. So you are, when we say Malawi is a net importer, we mean that imports are more than exports. So the answer for X minus M is negative. So when they say define what we mean by trade balance, we are talking about exports versus imports. That's what the trade balance is all about. I will send you, if I still have it, I think there was, I think in DRC, they were trying to recruit somebody and they were asking, the parliamentary appointments committee were asking questions. The interviewing panel was asking questions to a candidate to define what he understands by trade balance, trade balance. And he was talking about population of a country. Very embarrassing, actually. Just remind
Okay,
me
so you
before I go
mean
to bed to share you that clip.
so you mean always we should be going to with the trade whereby X is greater than M, yeah?
Sorry?
I'm saying, so you mean that the national should be going with the trade that where X is greater than M, not X is less than M, eh?
When X is greater than M, it
Yeah, I'm saying
means
if you can say that.
you have
Uh.
a trade surplus, and it also shows that you will have a good foreign exchange levels, foreign exchange reserves. So the way foreign exchange is driven, when we say Madora Akusowa, so when the exchange rate that we talk about, for example, exchange rate basically means price of foreign currency. So an exchange rate is just like interest rates. It's a price. Interest rates is a price of capital. Foreign exchange is foreign exchange rate is a price of foreign currency. So how much do you pay for a dollar? So what price is a dollar? So that's what we mean by exchange rate. It's a price. Now prices are determined by supply and demand. You are now
Okay, that
economists.
was
You should know that when we say something is a price, it is determined by supply and demand. Now, in case of exchange rates, we will be looking at supply and demand of foreign currency. So how is supply looked at, for example? Let me digress a little bit. The supply of a dollar and the demand of a dollar is dependent on X minus M. So for example, how much are we exporting so that we can have dollars? How do we get dollars? So somebody comes in from, let's say, Germany. He has brought dollars. He wants to buy beans. So he comes here with his dollars in his pocket. He wants to go and buy beans kudenza. So he has dollars kudenza. The beans are sold in Marai Kwacha. So he has to look for kwachas, change those dollars into kwachas so that he can go and buy beans in Desa. So he will change, he will look for kwacha. And then he will buy the beans and take the beans with him as he goes back to Germany. So we have exported the beans. What has happened? He has left the kwacha, the dollars here, and he used the kwacha. Now you can imagine that if a lot of them are coming to come and buy beans, a lot of them, they are coming in thousands and thousands and thousands, are coming to buy beans. Marau beans is very popular. These guys are coming in with dollars. So they will be at the bureaus, at the banks, looking for kwachas because the people who are selling beans are charging them in kwacha. So because there are so many of them looking for kwachas, the kwachas will run out. There will be a shortage of kwachas. Now you have learned in economics that when there's a shortage, what happens to prices? Prices go up. So the price of a kwacha will start going up. These people will start bidding because maybe they don't have time. They want to make sure they have the kwachas so they can buy the beans and go home. So they will start saying, I can give you more dollars for your 1 million kwacha that I want. So they'll start bidding, and somebody will say, oh, I'll offer you more dollars for this 1 million kwacha I want. So that's how the value of the kwacha will now become very strong because it is sought after. Ambira akuifuna kwachayo, akuifuna kwachayo because akufuna zinto zanu, they want your beans. And that's how you make your currency strong. And that's how you build foreign reserves. So the supply of dollars is actually the export of your products. So when we said supply and demand in the foreign exchange, in balance of trade, or in trade, international trade, we are talking about the supply of goods and services, because that's what money buys. And that's what foreign exchange buys. Foreign currency buys. It buys goods. Are you clear there?
Yeah, I am, but I was trying to ask to say, okay, so if we are saying that the national economy is growing, we mean that we are exporting more than
Not
importing.
only
That means,
exporting. National economy is growing is how big the GDP becomes. So your GDP is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. All those add up to GDP. So your GDP can be growing because your I is growing up, or your C is growing, or your G is growing, or all of them are growing, or your X minus M is growing. GDP growth is what gives us economic growth. Production of goods and services. Mind you, GDP is production of goods and services. So once you produce more and more, your GDP becomes more and more, so your economic growth becomes more and more. What I was explaining was X minus M. This particular section of this equation represents international trade. And that's where we come in with issues of foreign exchange reserves. And in Malawi, you also know that a lot of products that we produce they use imported raw materials. So what you have in C, I, G, a lot of those products have got a lot of foreign component. That includes fuels, petrol and diesel, in order to produce those things, which is also reflected again in X minus M. So when you are a net importer like we are, our GDP it shrinks because we are importing more than exporting. So the answer there, X minus M, is negative. So if that answer is negative, it means our GDP is getting constrained. Okay? So instead of C plus I plus G, then we have minus. So C plus I plus G minus. That's what we get in case of Malawi. Because the answer in that bracket is actually negative. Do you get it? Hello?
Loud and clear.
So you can imagine that as Malawi, and we have been in this situation for many, many, many years. We have a trade deficit for many, many, many years. So instead of growing, we get retarded by this answer that we get when we find the solution of X minus M. Because the answer for X minus M is always a huge negative. Because we import too much and export very little. And our kwacha will never be strong. Okay.
Sir,
Yes?
You explained some of the reasons that makes currency weaker or stronger. You mentioned about if kwacha becomes scarce, then it means more people will be demanding for it, hence making it stronger. Are there any other ways apart from such scarcity that can make kwacha strong?
No,
Let me answer. Okay, what we are supposed to do is we need to export more than importing. In that way, people will be like they will need kwacha to change dollars. That means we have kwacha, it will have power. Kawamfaga.
I'm
yeah,
not
I
looking at
get
that.
you.
I'm looking at,
The only
you get me, sir?
there is no other way apart from exporting more to make your kwacha strong. And I didn't say that. I think you. I can't remember the way you have put it, but you were wrong somehow in interpreting what I said. Let me repeat it again. I said, when people come and buy your beans, they bring dollars. They are not Malawians. They bring their currency to go and buy beans, Budesa. So they will want to buy kwacha. And because many of them are coming to buy kwachas, the kwacha will be scarce. And twayamba kulimbirana. So that will make the price go up. When we say price, we mean the exchange rate.
The exchange rate, yeah.
Will go up because there are too many people, they are scrambling for the kwacha. Basically, what they are scrambling for are the beans. They want to buy beans. But because the beans are sold in Malawi kwacha, they will have to change their money into Malawi kwacha. So because there are many of them, they will be queuing up at the bank and they will go to a bank and run it dry of kwachas. Some will start going to the to the black market to find the kwacha. And because of this demand for kwachas, which is actually demand for beans, the kwacha will become stronger. It's this principle of demand and supply that you have learned. Remember the demand curve and supply curve. When there's a shortage, prices go up. And that's what makes, for example, when we say the kwacha is strong, what we mean is that you use very few kwachas to buy a dollar. When you have been using 500 kwacha to buy $1, now you are using 200 kwacha to buy $1. It means your kwacha has become strong. And for your kwacha to become strong, it must be highly sought. And wakunja aina kumaifuna kwacha yanuyo because akufuna kugura zinthu sana. Now, vice versa is also the same. So, for example, a lot of you want to go and buy magari moto, go and buy zinthu zakunja. Because zinthu zakunja, they are not being sold in kwachas, they are being sold in dollars. So you go and find the dollars. So many of you are queuing up to find a dollar just because you want kugura chinthu chakunja. Mwazazana mu banki nonse mukufuna madora asowa. So when the dollars become scarce, the dollar will become expensive. If you have been buying a dollar with 500 kwacha, now you're buying a dollar with 1,000 kwacha. You get it?
Yes, sir. You have explained it well of the situation which is happening right now.
Yes.
And the kwacha,
The scarce of dollars in the banks. What you have explained, you have explained it pretty very much well. Current situation in Malawi.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's what happens. So there are policy implications there then. One is that Malawi has to make sure that we deal with structural changes on the supply side. on that market demand and supply curve, we need to look at the supply side. So we should invest more in producing for export if we want to deal with this problem of weak currency, weak kwacha. We need to export more to make it stronger. The second thing that you can do is drive people's mindset change. People should be happy to wear something which has been made in Malawi, to use a plate which has been made in Malawi, to use a shoe which has been made in Malawi, if we have any. So sometimes this idea that foreign is best has to go. The only problem is that most of what we produce, which we can sell abroad, we use the raw materials which are imported. So we need to make sure that we produce things that are using local materials to produce and then export. So anyway, this is another lecture. Sorry for digressing, but I thought it was important as we were discussing X minus M. Any questions so far? I will share you
By X
another thing that talks about the approaches: income approach, expenditure approach, value added approach. I think I have another PDF which I will share with you later on. It's very important that you get the concepts correct, and you are also able to explain this equation, GDP. You should be able to explain the various components that are in there in that formula. So these things are external environment of a business. So the X minus M that we are talking about is an external thing. The exchange rates that come, you may be in a business of salon, or you are maybe in a business of producing cement blocks or whatever. There are certain things that you can control within your business. You know, the things that we learned from the production functions, cost functions, and profit maximization and all that. But there are certain things such as interest rates, inflations, and things like that, which are none of your business. So one thing before we move on is the issue of expenditures, which are aggregate demand. That demand curve, it represents consumers, buyers, customers. So when we add, again, we are running out of time again. No, we have 10 minutes. So aggregate demand is when we add all of us together. Now, remember, I've just been talking about how a kwacha can gain value. Now, you can also have a situation, for example, where in the economy, the expenditures, the aggregate demand are more than the supply. So when the demand is more than the supply, what will you get? You will get prices rising. Because when aggregate demand is more than aggregate supply, you have a shortage. Remember, maybe I should go, I should take you to the first diagram of this income accounting lecture. This one here. Okay? So we had aggregate demand and aggregate supply. And from the aggregate demand is where we now had the expenditure approach, the output approach. Aggregate supply is the supply, sorry, aggregate demand is where we had the expenditure approach. Then aggregate supply is where we had the production approach or value-added approach. Now, there can be a disequilibrium here. You can have a situation where demand is higher than supply. And when aggregate demand is higher than aggregate supply, you have a situation of a shortage in the system. And that has a tendency to push prices up. And that increase in prices, a consistent increase in general prices, is called inflation. So this kind of inflation is what we call demand pull inflation. Inflation caused by excessive aggregate demand versus aggregate supply in the economy. So you have a general rise of prices, and that causes inflation. Now, inflation is not a good thing, because what it means when you have inflation, when your income does not match the growing prices, your purchasing power gets affected. So if you went to ShopRite, you always took 500,000 to buy groceries for the month, and you used to have the whole trolley full of stuff. Now, because of the general increase in prices, that 500 will only buy you half of the trolley. So, and that's not a good thing, because that is where consumers get hurt. And it is apart from being a nasty thing, it is also a political bombshell. Nobody wants that to happen. Okay?
Sir,
So we'll discuss
when
more on inflation. There are various types of inflations. The most important one is demand pull, which is aggregate demand being more than aggregate supply. But we also have inflation, which is due to cost of production. Cost of production increasing. So the suppliers also want to recoup. So they will charge more because it has costed them more to make than before. So these two are the major ones. Of course, there are other smaller causes of inflation, but these are the major ones: demand pull or cost push. Now, before we go there, since we were talking about economic growth, aggregate supply and aggregate demand, and issues of how to measure economic activity, because basically GDP is about economic activity. I think I want to take this opportunity to talk about the general thing that happens in an economy. In an economy, you will not always have good times and think that always you have the way things are supposed to be. We have sometimes in an economy situations where we have different business cycles. So let's talk about business cycles for a moment. But maybe before I do that, Is there any question? Hello, any question? Are people there?
No question.
Go
Mwatopa,
ahead, sir.
mwatopa.
No, we have understood, sir. So we don't know what to ask.
Huh?
No, all good, sir. All good.
Nenani ngati mwatopa, ine sina topi.
It's not open.
If
No,
you want a
trust
tea
you.
break, I can give you. My wife has just given me a cup of coffee, so you can also have.
Now
Should
you're
we
gonna
break
sit
for
down
4 minutes for tea break?
Ndayo gona usati omwati.
Ah,
Sir, you want
inu.
us have 2 minutes when you do not
We
have
will
a lot
close
of time.
after
Let's say you
10.
have 10 minutes left. Yeah.
We will close after 10.
If you
Uh-huh.
want us to have that break for you to have the tea, you have your tea, it's fine, we can do that.
Tigaileni tiyo
No,
mafeso
please, when
timwevo.
I'm sleepy.
Tigaileni
Hey,
tiyo
don't
mafeso
do this.
timwevo.
Koma
Let's
inu
continue.
ana anga tanibverani chisoni ndine muntu wankuru mwavu.
Kodi
Utari
mukuti bwanji
kumama
sa?
kumpano.
Ndikuti 4 minutes timweko tea.
Atamwani
Sir,
tiyo. Ndi shuga wakutayo tamwani tiyo.
Around. Imwani.
We are still here, have your tea.
No, you can
Ndi
be
shuga
drinking while
wakutayo.
you're explaining.
Debson,
No,
let him
you know
drink.
what? We have 2 minutes before this session closes because we are using trial Zoom, which only gives us 40 minutes each time. But the good thing is that we can log in as many times as we want. So kwasara logging in the last one.
Imwani tiyo.
Zabobo, tamwani tiyo.
Yeah, so apapa
Tijoin
kwatasara ndi 1 minute kuti atisekere Zoom wa, and then we log in again. So just give me 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay,
drink the tea.
Daddy,
No pressure. Drink the tea
anganiza
as much as you
tiyo.
can.
Hey, I want to sleep.
Kazigona.
Meza zako hao.
Kazigona. You're not hosting the room, you can sleep.
Yeah.
Kodi muti chani ino ndi nkhope zanu zopatukazo.
Masamba ino.
Kachibumi ngati chani kaya.
Sumu na sambe yesu zimene zinapamba
Madzola
mayi.
mafuta kumaina.
Zimene
Tabzana
zinapamba
arusa
mayi.
masambe.
Masambe.
amba class nazandu kutoka training nakuuza za training kuti musama pake class nakuuza 9
Adzokani apa ndizibumi zanu zolezekazo tachosani apa nyasi zimene tachosani.
mvuru wake mwini
Chala ngati
makazi
mtengo.
Mutu ndipapo tisizi kusiyana.
Chala nikutalika ngati mtengo.
Mutu ndipapo tisizi kusiyana. Chipumi ufanana ndi slide zone.
kasambe sinasambe tuchoka training
Mmazamba. Mmazamba.
ukolunga tu akubambino pamenepo
Ungomveka chiseye basi tatseka ukamuwowa.
chabwino